Okay, hello everyone. This is our first year in 2024, and we are going to continue on with our third lesson in particles. Particles being, what have we called particles in the past? What's our word for them that describes what they are, what their job is in sentences? Does anyone remember? What are particles? Particles are road signs or signposts. Yeah, it's a sign of some point. The particles always point to the word to the left, and it lets you know what that word is doing. What's the point of that word being in the sentence? And we've covered several already. It feels like we haven't gotten that much done, but we actually have. We've covered, I believe, we've mentioned wa to some extent. We've talked about some of the directional particles. The ni and de and a as well. Forgot to put that in. The a also. We talked about the direct object particle and the ga we jumped into just a little bit. We haven't gotten into too much detail with that. And then ka. Now the ones that I kind of threw at the beginning are ones we're going to be hitting on again today. Today we're going to be talking about mo and to, which are somewhat similar. We put them together because you can get them confused, and hopefully after today's lesson you'll feel that you can see when one gets used and when the other one does. And so with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. Keep in mind that we are in the VC Events text channel, the one that I just typed into, and if you have any questions about the lesson, just type them out whenever you want to. There's not an official question time. So this is a safe space. We're all beginners, or we were beginners, but we know that feeling. And so if you have something you want to ask, just let us know. And I or someone else will be more than happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll be using the lesson inside of Renshu as a guideline for what we're talking about. And you can check that out on the screen sharing that's inside of Discord. Okay. So we are jumping into the lesson with mo initially. Fortunately, today we have two particles that sound exactly the way they're written. There's not that crazy, oh, it sounds like this, but it actually, you actually do this. And mo is something that refers to also or to, and it marks something in the sentence that's being added to something else. In the same way that also or to works. It's saying, for this, I like this. And I also like this. I also like something else. And there are a lot of similarities with to. And so don't worry about that yet if you have a bit of to knowledge. And we'll separate those out, as we go. And so the first thing that I want you to think about with mo, and this is the thing that's going to make it easiest to split it out with to, is that mo can't stand on its own. It can't stand on its own. And what I mean is that let's take a sentence. We have our awa bides sentence that we've gone over and over again. But let's use a different sentence. I'm going to reference some of the particles we learned earlier. And I'm going to talk about myself as if I was in the third person. And as I often do, I'm at the konbini for this sentence. Maiko wa konbini de pan o tabemasu. So where am I? I'm at the konbini, which is how we say convenience store in Japanese. It comes from the full word convenience, but they keep it short because who wants to say convenience store? It's too long. And so konbini de pan o tabemasu. And this sentence, what I want to focus on is this sentence stands on its own. You don't need other sentences to explain this sentence. The de in there and the o in there and the wa in there, all those particles exist by themselves. They don't need something else. And if you're thinking, what am I talking about? Let's look at mo now. Mo always follows another sentence. It is always the second sentence that has a mo. In other words, you cannot have a sentence by itself. You just throw a sentence out, you say, hey, someone, and then you start using mo and expect them to understand. They're not. Mo is a follow-up particle. And I think it's one of the only ones, if not the only one, that will do this, that needs something else before you can get to that. So let's look at Ewa bides, which, isn't a very exciting sentence. And we're going to jump to an actual sentence in just a sec. Ewa bides, si mo bides. We've used that Ewa bides example. If you remember the way we described it in math terms, way at the beginning we said A is B. A is B. And, so B is describing A. And if we want to say A is B, and then C is also B, we can use that mo. And mo is an interesting particle in that it replaces, not always, but it often replaces other particles. And says, this spot where I am, this is happening for this as well as whatever I talked about before. And as the page notes, it's used for this common ground. Now let's look at an actual sentence. Now some of you, not all of you, you're all students of Japanese, but let's say some of you are university students. If you're wondering, hey, I'm a high school student, why can't I use gakusei? You can. But if you can see on the pop-up that's popping up, just a little vocab thing. Typically, not always, but generally speaking, if you're talking about high school students and lower, you usually use the word seito, which also means student. Though generally speaking, with university, you'll use gakusei. So gakusei is for your university level. So I'm sure there's a few university students in here. If not, someone pretend like you're a university student. And so let's say I am as well. Let's jump back 22 years and say I'm a university student. Watashi wa gakusei desu. I'm a university student. Now, as a follow-up sentence, if you could say, kare wa gakusei desu. He is a university student. But just like in the English, if you said I'm a university student, he's a university student. It has that Dr. Seuss feel to it. It's not the way we normally speak. And we would usually say he's a university student too. Or he's also a university student. And that's what the mo is doing here. Is it's taking something that was mentioned earlier and saying that thing that I talked about a second ago, that also happens to be the case with this one. And as you can see, it replaces the wa. It replaces the wa. That is the first time this has happened, so that might be a little to some of you. It's something we haven't seen yet. Now here we're comparing nouns. I is a noun, student is a noun, he is a noun. We can do that with adjectives as well. So if you're a sushi fan, and it remind me of the sushi, or quote-unquote sushi, I did not eat. It wasn't sushi, but it was sushi adjacent at a ryokan I was at a couple days ago. I'll tell you at the end of the lesson if we have time. So if you like sushi and you say, sushi wa oishii desu, sushi is yummy. Sushi is delicious. And you're going to follow up and say ramen too. Ramen is also delicious. Ramen mo oishii desu. That's all you have to do is drop out that wa and stick in the mo instead. So we're going to come back to this later on. I'm just going to type this out now. Whenever you have a wa and you're taking, that's the topic particle, and you're mentioning another topic. You talk about sushi first, and you talk about ramen. The wa gets replaced by the mo. And it's worth mentioning this because you're going to see in a few cases that's not the case. In a few cases, that's not what's happening. But with wa gets replaced by mo. And, you can make your sentences a bit more common about that. Or not common, complex. So if we expand out our sentence and we say, instead of the des formation we're using, we're still dropping that wa out. We're talking about two different people, one person doing something, the other person doing the same thing. Watashi wa ramen o tabemasu. I eat ramen. I have ramen. And then Kao-chan, too. Kao-chan's a huge ramen fan. Kao mo ramen o tabemasu. I eat ramen. Kao eats ramen as well. Now, we're going to practice in just a second, but does anyone see anything inefficient about these sentences that makes you say, why am I saying this many words? Isn't Japanese that language when I say as little as possible? I don't say what I don't absolutely have to say. Do you notice something in there that we could drop out? Any guesses? The first sentence, we never drop anything out. But do you see anything in that second sentence that you think, I don't think we need that? Any ideas? Now, if you're all as sleepy as I am, then don't worry. You're not required to answer. I'll be happy to answer for you. I see someone typing out. I'm going to give them a few more seconds to try and answer. Otherwise, I'll let you know. And if you're wondering, aren't there a couple answers? The answer is yes. There's not a single answer here. So if you're wondering, is it this or is it this one? You're probably right on both accounts. So Ari is thinking ramen. And Boba-chan, the question was, what can we drop out of that second sentence? Like, how can we make the sentence more efficient? Okay, now I'm getting some different answers. Okay, so basically everyone's correct, more or less. And whenever you're using mo, you typically don't say most of the things that are being repeated. They come after the mo. And so keeping polite, and when I say polite, I'm referring to, the polite conjugation, the polite level of Japanese that we'll stick to for several more lessons. You could also, for the second sentence, this would be fine. Kao mo tabemasu. Kao mo tabemasu. So I eat ramen. Kao-chan, or Kao, also eats it. Now, one person said, hey, ramen o tabemasu. Let's just drop all that out. And the answer is you can do that. However, you're starting to get more casual. And that's not wrong. It's just we're not doing the casual level. But you've probably heard this. And if you're speaking casually, this is totally okay. So, someone says, I love ramen. And then you say, me too. You don't usually say, watashi mo suki desu. You just say, watashi mo. And that works casually in Japanese as well. But in a more polite situation, which is most situations, you'd say, kao mo tabemasu. Now, before we jump to the next usage of mo, let's practice this a little bit. And before we do that, no, let's stick with that. And let's stick with the sentence that's in front of us. And if you want to be a bit adventurous and jump out to a different verb, you can. But I'd like you to tell me you know, uh, a few things that you like, or a few things that are delicious. Let's go back to that one. I'm going to back up. Let's go here. Let's do this. And I'd like you to tell me two things that are delicious. And some of you that know a bit more, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to jump ahead and use to. Don't do that yet. We'll get to that. But, I am a huge curry fan. I had some last night. First curry of the year. And if I can type correctly, there we go. I like curry. When I say curry, since I'm in Japan, I'm referring to Japanese curry. I also like Indian curry. So, カレーは美味しいです。インドカレーも美味しいです。So, what are two foods or drinks? Things that are delicious. What are two things that you think are yummy? And try typing them out. This isn't required for those of you that are here for the first time. This is just one of those chances to do a little bit of practice. And Adi, yeah, we're getting to that soon. We are getting to that. That is part of the lesson, so don't worry. You are ahead, but that's not a bad thing. And for those that are unaware, the way we do this is that if you want to participate, you can. You can type in Romaji. You can type in Hiragana. I generally say let's hold off on the kanji just because we are in a beginner's lesson. But yeah, give it a shot if you want. And we're happy to make, gentle corrections. And when it comes to putting spaces in sentences, there's no real rule that says this is right, this is wrong. So whether you're doing it the way that Nibutsu is doing it and putting spaces after each particle or kind of chunk in the sentence, that's fine. If you're putting spaces between every word or particle, that's also fine. If you're putting no spaces, it's all good. So we have someone talking about eggs and natto. Megumi is talking about desserts, the most important part of the meal. They like ice cream and they either like pudding or they like one of the pudding adjacent Pokemon named Pudding. Shoyu's a fan apparently of both Western and Eastern snacks, donuts and manju. I'll give you all a few more seconds to try those out before we jump into the next section. And connecting the first and the last sentence, Kaylee likes cake and they like donuts, and I'm in complete agreement with them. Really tiny thing. Cake sounds like it has an I in it, but it's written with a dash. It's one of those weird things with katakana. Is for a lot of those elongated vowels, we put the dashes in there instead of the e or the u, which would usually use in hiragana to elongate it. Okay, let's keep going. We talked about replacing these was. That's not the only thing you can replace with. Let me jump to where we are. There we go. That's not the only thing you can replace. You can also replace o, that particle that marks those direct objects, the thing that's being affected by the verb. You can replace ga as well. And let's look at o first. We talked about eating earlier. And let's switch over to drinking. I just had breakfast, so it's still on my mind a little bit. And you might say I drink water, which is great. I love water. I've got some next to me. And I also drink tea. So here, you might say, oh yeah, there is a topic in the beginning. It's watashi wa, it's getting dropped off. But here we're focusing on doing an action to something, and then doing the same action to something else. And so, I drink water and I drink tea. So again, real fast, this one's a bit shorter. What's two things you drink? Again, for those of you that know, let's avoid using to. It's usually easier, but let's avoid using it for now. And tell me two things you drink. And I'm not the biggest ocha fan, so I'm gonna change my answer. Ocha's not bad, but I prefer when my body allows it. I've cut back because of headaches, or migraines rather. But when I can, I don't know why I put nomimasen. I apologize for that. But I drink water. I also drink. There we go. Third time's the charm. I also drink coffee. So we've got people talking about juice. Juice is I've been focusing on this lately, but juice is one of those katakana words that has the elongated dash. It sounds like juice in English, but in Japanese it's juice. Juice. So how do we remember that? Let's work with mnemonics. Why is there a dash there? There's a dash there because it's a straw, and you need a straw for that juice. And you're frustrated because the straw fell over, I guess. Maybe it fell over and the straw is so short it fell over into the juice. So you not only no longer have a straw, but you're wondering, why did the restaurant give me a straw that's so short that it fell into my cup? So we have other people talking about cola, Sprite. Raito's talking about both a kid's drink, typically a kid's drink, but adults drink it too, and an adult's drink that kids sometimes drink. Ramune is a very interesting drink that if you don't know it, you might and not realize it. Ramune is that drink that has the ball inside of the glass bottle for reasons unknown. It just got trapped in there. Okay, but the examples are looking good. Make sure you have that mo coming in on the second sentence. I'll give you a few more seconds and then we'll jump in and keep going. Okay. Now, the ga particle, we haven't talked about it too much, and that's going to continue today. But if you remember, a few lessons ago, we did talk about those ski, kirai, hoshi, like, dislike, and wants. And we said if you say you like something, you say ga suki desu. And just like that, if you're talking not about drinks that you drink, but drinks that you like, you might say mizu ga suki desu, ocha mo suki desu. So, to recap, we've got 3 particles that get replaced by mo. If they were the ga or the wa or the o in the first sentence, they're getting replaced by mo in the second sentence. Now, let's step it up and go to a slightly, we're in beginner Japanese. I'd say this is a slight step just above beginner Japanese, but it fits in here. And so we're going to talk about it. This thing. I kept harping on wa, ga, and o getting replaced by mo because some particles don't. Some particles do not get replaced. And these are the 2. Well, there's one more, but it's so rare that we don't mention it. We don't talk about it. But ni and de are very common. And with ni and de, we don't replace them. Instead, we slap that mo onto the back of it. So if ever there's a ni in the sentence, and we're going to have some examples in just a minute. If there's a ni in the sentence, and there's a few things we've used ni to talk about. We talked about ni with time. It marks time, as in like what time do you wake up? Or what time do you go to school? We also talked about ni being the direction of movement. If you say I go to school or I go to the konbini to get some of all the drinks we talked about, then we use that. We talked about de. De has other usages, but so far the de that we've talked about has been just the location of the action. So those are what we've covered so far. So you could see, oh, I need to talk about 2 times. I do something at this time, I do something at this other time as well. Or I want to go, or I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to go to another place after that. Same as, where you do things. I study Japanese at home, I study Japanese at Starbucks, whatever it happens to be. And in those cases, we do not replace. We do not replace. So if you look at the sentence in front of us, we've got 2 times. We haven't talked about times specifically, as in here's how you form them, but we're keeping it simple. 6 o'clock, rokuji. Rokuji ni tabemasu. I eat at 6 o'clock. That might seem really early for some of you. It might seem something really late for other ones. For my family, it's actually kind of late because kids, 4 and 6-year-olds, get hungry really quickly. So, rokuji ni tabemasu. I also eat at 12. I'm not sure if this is 12 lunchtime or 12 at midnight. I guess it could be either. Rokuji ni mo tabemasu. I eat at 6. I also eat at 12. You could be talking about a trip. I hope some of you are planning to visit Japan this year. And if you are, you're probably going to more than one place, presumably. And so you might say, Tokyo ni ikimasu. I go to Tokyo. And I'm also going to Osaka. Osaka ni mo ikimasu. I go to Tokyo, I go to Osaka as well. And same situation here. You're just adding that mo onto the second usage of the particle in the second sentence. Now, I'm going to show you one more, and then we're going to practice a little bit. And then we are at the halfway mark in our lesson. So, there's the de as well. Uchi de Nihongo hanashimasu. So if you have someone at home that also speaks Japanese, Or you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to just speak to myself in Japanese. I'm going to take advantage of it and do what I need to do. Then, you know, you speak Japanese at home. And you might also speak Japanese at school because you're taking a class. 学校でも日本語を話します。So remember, the de is using for marking those actions. And you're saying, all right, I do one thing here, I do the same thing somewhere else. And you might notice here as well that we have a bit of repetition. You say, well, I've got Nihongo o in that first sentence, I've got Nihongo o in the second sentence. Let's just get rid of that. It's pretty obvious from context that I'm talking about speaking Japanese. And so if I say, uchi de Nihongo o hanashimasu, gakkou de mo hanashimasu. So that's all there is to mo. Is if we're talking about the wa, ga, or o, we're dropping those suckers out and we're replacing it with mo. We're talking about ni or de. We're going to, focus on adding it to the end of the second one. So let's not focus on the terrible things that happened in Japan so far, and let's think about a trip either that you're going to take or that you plan or hope to take one day in the future. So let's focus on Japan, and it can be big or small. It can be cities, it can be stores, it can be different types of animal cafes, whatever works for you. But if you go to Japan, tell me 2 places you're going. Tell me 2 places you would go. And some of you might know this, some of our longer Discord members, but I love Yosakoi, or I love dance in general, Japanese dance. And I love Yosakoi in particular. And so I would probably go to Kochi. Kochi is a prefecture down in Shikoku, that tiny island that kind of the rest of southern Japan wraps around. And then where would I go next? I might go to Kyoto next. Oh, and that's not how you write ikimasu. There we go. Kochi ni ikimasu. Kyoto ni mo ikimasu. Probably on the way back. It's a 10-hour drive from Niigata, which I'm crazy enough to have done in the past. Oh, sorry for dragging that window. So you're going to Japan. Don't worry about budget. Don't worry about time. Where are 2 places you're going? And for those of you watching the video, Discord just kind of blanked out of existence. And I'm going to let this keep running until it returns. Come on, Discord. If you're in Discord and you can still hear me, then great. But you probably can't. Hello again. Am I back? Am I back in? Thanks, I'm back. Okay, sorry, stream viewers or video viewers. Apparently Discord just kind of blanked out. And it's back. So, okay, I'm back. We are talking about 2 places that you will go in Japan. So where are you going? So Nicole's going to Hokkaido and Tokyo. Hokkaido has an extra u on the end. Hokkaido. Bunny is focusing more on inside of Tokyo. Bunny's going to Harajuku and Shibuya. Both fun places to go to. What else? Where else are you going? Anyone else? If you're like me, you can geek out and you can say, I'm going to the Pokemon Center. That is what's waiting for me when I go to Tokyo. That's fine. My son and I are full into Pokemon fever. I never got into Pokemon when I was younger, and my son is 6, so it's a perfect time for both of us to jump into that world. And my son is learning the harsh reality that not all Pokemon can be found or even traded into any specific game. And so he got some money for Christmas, or not Christmas, for New Year's, which is kind of a tradition in Japan. Kids get money, little money presents. And he got basically a Pokemon encyclopedia, with every single Pokemon in it. And he has found some. He's like, I want these Pokemon in my copy of Violet. And the first one he found cannot be traded in. And so he was broken, just completely broken about that. Poor guy. Okay. So we've got some places that people are going to. Looking good, looking good. Okay, we are a bit behind. I talked about the earthquake a bit before the lesson started. And so let's keep going. And again, if you have questions about what we're doing, just let me know. Now, fortunately, the second half, what we're doing next, is the easier half. We're going to talk about to. To is similar in its usage because you're using it to talk about two things that are related, but you're using them in the same sentence. You're using them in the same sentence. And the nice thing about to is it's used in exactly the same way that you would use the word and. Exactly the same way. It comes right between the two words that you're connecting, and that's it. That's all it is. As long as it's a noun, whether it's at the beginning of the sentence, if it's in the middle of the sentence, it's a place, it's a time, it's a location, you can use to. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more at the end if we have time, but mo focuses on an addition. Mo always came in that second sentence. It always came in that second sentence. To doesn't need that relationship to work. You can say, I like curry and cheese. Why not? That's the word that came into my head. I like curry and cheese. And that sentence can exist by itself. So let's take a look at some examples. I just mentioned that. Okay, so we're going back to food again. And if you say, I like apples and oranges. Oh, and I forgot to screen share. Yeah, Discord kicked me out. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that. There we go. Okay, screen share is back. And I'll be reading what's on the screen as people reconnect. So, if you say I like apples and oranges, this is all you have to do. Is you would usually, if you said I like apples, you just say ringo ga suki desu. All you have to do is throw that to in there, in between the two things, and that's it. There's no change to anything else in the sentences. The other particles don't change. The verb doesn't change. There's no conjugation changes because it's plural. In fact, plural doesn't really exist in Japanese. We'll get to that in a later lesson. But the explicit plural, as in I just add an S to something, or I'm talking about two things, so the verb needs to change. That doesn't exist, which actually makes it easier in a lot of ways. So we've got this. If we're talking about other parts of the sentence, here's the thing that comes before the o, our direct object. You might say niku o tabemasu, or you might say niku to sakana o tabemasu. And when you look at this, the o is attaching itself. We always say the o, the particle is attached to the left, right? In this case, the o is not attaching to sakana. The o is attaching to niku and sakana. The to pretty much hooks those two things together and grabs those two things and makes it one unit. And then that is affected by whatever comes after it. So, uchi to gakkou de nihongo o hanashimasu. These are all the sentences we had earlier. This is just putting them together. And if we wanted to simplify the things we were doing before, Tokyo to Osaka ni ikimasu. I will go to Tokyo and Osaka. And there's a nice little thing here. If I'm going to read it out, the to shows a tighter relationship because they're being mentioned in the same sentence, if that makes sense. If you say, I'm going to Tokyo and Osaka, that sounds like it's probably in the same trip or reasonably close, to one another. The mo sounds like that could be the case, but in terms of strength between the relationship, it might be that you're going to Tokyo and I'm also going to Osaka, but it might be that you're going to Osaka the next time you go. So to, think about it. If it's a stronger relationship, it's going to go together in the sentence. The mo, on the other hand, feels a bit more separate. It feels a bit more separate. Now, this might feel like a strange distinction to make, and you're thinking, I don't want to have to think that way. I don't have to think, wait, how strong is this relationship, and which one am I going to use? And so here's what happens in real life, actually, is that we typically use to when we're speaking. Mo is often used when the two things you're talking about are broken up by something. They're broken up by something. So let me give you an example. So let's say I'm talking about my trip to Japan with someone, and I say Tokyo ni ikimasu. And the other person, let's call them B, they say, "Wow, ii na, that sounds nice, that's great, ii na." And then I follow up with, I'm also going to Osaka. This would be a common way of using mo. Because like those exercises before, you might think, why would I say something and then say the next thing, when I could have just put them together? And that's a valid point. Usually it's because they're split up by something else in the sentence. Either someone else is saying something, you're having an interaction, an exchange. Someone else is saying something, or you are adding to what someone else is saying. So let's say I see Adi typing. So Adi says, Adi's going to Tokyo. Tokyo ni ikimasu. And then I say, so I'm going to type me. I say, watashi mo ikimasu. I will go as well. And, again, this is broken up in the sense that it's one person talking and then the next person talking. You wouldn't say, the thing you said, let me rewrite the thing you said and add myself into it. You wouldn't do that. You would just say, they'd say, I'm going to Tokyo, and you say, oh, I'm going to. And like the page says, the relationship there is not as strong, if there's a relationship at all. If I say I'm going to, that doesn't imply at all, actually, that I'm going with Adi, or even at the same time. I'm just saying, I share that attribute with Adi. Adi is going to Tokyo, I'm going to. To, however, shows a much stronger link, and especially with actions, it's showing a togetherness. It's showing a togetherness. So if I said, ari, watashi to ari wa, let me say that again. Watashi to ari wa, I and ari, or ari and I, are going to Tokyo. Well, then it's very clear. Okay, we're going together, it sounds like. Unless I say right afterwards, that's not the case. It really sounds like we're going together. So to is going to show a stronger relationship, whereas mo has, welcome back everyone. The technical difficulties have resolved themselves, and so I'm back. And let's go ahead and finish up this lesson. We were talking about to, and before we were talking about linking together, two different things that go together. And there's a few more usages that we're going to mention. One of them is the one that's right in front of us. And it, before we talked about, I believe I was referring to Ari and myself and saying, we could say, if we were going to Japan together, I might say something like, Ari to watashi wa Tokyo ni ikimasu. I believe this is what I said earlier. And this is fine. This is a completely fine way to use it. There is one more way that you can rearrange the sentence, and that's what is on the screen. So look at what's going on here. The first sentence is what I wrote, but a different topic. So let's jump over what's on the screen first. Kao to tomodachi wa eiga o mimasu. So Kao and Kao's friends watch a movie. Now look at the second sentence. We talked about to linking two things together, but it actually can stand on its own. It can stand on its own. Kao wa tomodachi to eiga o mimasu. Now the first one, as I mentioned before, that to is closest to the English word and when it's between two nouns. However, if the to is after just a single noun, it's closer to the word with. So that second sentence would be closer to Kao wa tomodachi. Let me say it. Kao wa tomodachi to eiga o mimasu. Kao will watch a movie with its friends. The first one, Kao and a friend or friends watches a movie. And the second one, Kao watches a movie with a friend. So you might think to yourself, all right, which one's better? Which one should I use? And, if you're a beginner, and there's a good chance you are, if you're in this lesson, neither of them are going to say, give off the wrong impression or insult someone or cause anything like that. They're close enough in meaning to where you can use either and you're going to get the same information across. They are both describing the exact same thing. Kao and friend, or Kao and friends, watching a movie. They're both talking about the same thing. However, in the first sentence, the topic marks the important thing in the sentence. It's the topic. It's what we're talking about. And in the first sentence, Kao to tomodachi, it's placing equal emphasis or importance on both Kao and its friend. Now, this isn't a importance in the sense of, they're both teachers, so they're both equally important in the terms of like social levels, and compared to, say, a teacher and a student, or a boss and an employee, or a parent and a child. It's not that kind of importance. It's just importance in terms of what you're talking about. And I'll give you a bit more information about that. So For example, let's think about these two questions, or these two answers, as, well, these two sentences as answers to questions. And let's say the question for the first sentence is, who will watch a movie? So maybe there's a few things to do, watch a movie in this room or go play Pokemon in the other room. And your mother says, okay, who's going to watch a movie? And you answer, Carl and its friend will watch a movie. That question is asking for the people. Who is going to do this action? And they are both of equal importance. Like, they are the answer. It's the who. However, let's look at that second sentence. Maybe we already know that Carl is going to watch a movie. And instead, we want a bit more information. We know Carl is watching a movie, and maybe we think Carl's going with someone, but we're not sure who. So we say, who is Carl-chan going to watch a movie with? Well, Carl-chan is going to watch a movie with a friend. And you can hear in that second sentence, it's not that the friend is less important. It's that the focus of the question was on Carl-chan. We're talking about Carl-chan. Carl-chan watching the movie is the important thing. And then, oh yeah, by the way, who is Carl-chan watching it with? Tomodachi to, with a friend. So you can probably hear that this isn't a huge difference. And it's not one so much that if you're trying to compose Japanese, that you should spend time thinking about, should I do it this way or should I do it this way? This should not be something to stop you from speaking. But as you get a bit more control over your Japanese and you use it, you'll be able to say, okay, it's usually you can make the decision based on whatever question is being asked or whatever information is required. So there's to and there is mo. Just as a quick recap, remember mo comes after. Mo is, in the second sentence. Sentence 1 has no mo. Sentence 2 is getting that mo and saying, hey, so that thing in sentence 1, it's also true for this thing in sentence 2. And they're often separated because it might be that those two sentences are separated by some comment that another person made, or sentence 1 is being said by one person, I love this movie, and sentence 2 is a different person saying, I love it too. But they're separate. To is being used to show, two things that are more tightly linked. Carl-chan and a friend will watch a movie. I will go to Tokyo and Osaka. I eat at 6 in the morning and at 12 noon. Things like that. And once I get this online, this will be available here inside the Discord. If you want to view it afterwards, it will also be up on our hidden YouTube channel and on the Renshu app /site itself. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you join us next time. We will be talking about existence verbs. That's the aru, arimasu, and iru, imasu. We'll be talking about those two verbs next time. So thank you so much for coming.